Hey, this is Bill from Calderwood Percussion. One of the tasks that we have to do on every rope drum, but I don't think we've ever caught on camera, is tying the splice. So today's the day, let's go. We're going to use a 3-strand filament polyester rope. That's what we use on almost all of our drums. It's made by New England Ropes and supplied to us by RW Rope, which is local to our shop. So this 3-strand filament polyester is really great for rope drums. It's very, very low stretch. It's more than strong enough to handle the tension of a rope tension snare. And it's really durable, so it always works out great on rope drums, and that's why it's our first choice. When I measure it, I kind of just measure roughly, because when I stretch out my arms, that's about 6 feet. A 16 by 16 rope drum needs about 42 feet of rope, so I just kind of do a rough measurement as I'm pulling, and that works out pretty well. In order to make the loop or the splice at the end, we're going to unravel a section of rope and then weave it back into itself. The result is going to be a loop that is probably the strongest point in the rope. Measure about maybe 5 inches or so from the end of the rope and fold it over. This is where the loop of our splice is going to be. So we need to unwind this, but as soon as we take this tape off, it's all going to want to unravel. So we're going to take the tape and move it to the top of our loop, and that's going to limit how much of this can unravel. Now we're going to open this up, just gently untwisting it until we have 3 separate strands all the way up to our piece of tape. In order to keep this from fraying while we work, we're going to need to melt these ends. You can use a lighter, a candle, a heat gun, whatever, but I find heat guns to be the best because unlike any actual flame, it doesn't leave any carbon, so it doesn't turn the rope black. And then once you've melted it, I like to kind of squish that melted section underneath your knife or chisel or whatever, because that gives you a much nicer end to work with. So we do that to all 3. The actual loop of the splice can be whatever size you want. I like to set it to where it's just a little bit larger than the rope that's going to have to pass through it on the drum. In order to weave these strands back through the rope, choose one of the 3, it doesn't really matter which one, and choose the point where you want the rope to join. We're going to unwind the rope just a little bit to make a space, and we're going to slide this strand through that space. Now we can see what the size of our loop is going to be, and we've woven the first strand 1 time. Now we need to weave this strand 1 more time so you can see where it went through the rope. It's under this strand. We're going to go over this strand and under the next one. So we're jumping a strand going under the next one. So gently, we just open up the rope a bit and push this strand through. So now our first strand is woven twice. We're now going to take the second strand. We're going to weave this one underneath the strand that we just jumped over. So same thing, we just kind of gently open the rope a bit and weave this strand under. There's a tool called a FID, which you can use to help you with this process, but with rope that's this small, I find it's really not necessary. Now the third strand is the one that can be a little bit challenging to be able to tell where it goes. So with the loop sort of flipped over, we can see that we have the 2 strands that we've already woven. Right in the middle here, you can see the strand that you're going to need to go under with this one. It seems like you should go under this way, but that's actually would be the opposite direction from the other 2, and they all need to go the same direction. So we're going to take this strand and go this way underneath that strand there. Now we have all 3 strands woven through. We can see the beginning of our splice. So pick any of the strands, and we're going to just continue weaving 1 more time for each of the 3. Take a strand, we're going to jump over the strand directly below, and then under the next one. And we will move on to the next strand, same thing. Jump over the strand directly below it, and then under the next one. And now the last. At this point, we've gone around twice with each of the 3 strands. We could just cut off the excess now, burn the ends, and this would be plenty strong enough the way that it is. It'll hold all the tension that it needs to hold on the drum. But it has kind of a blocky or chunky look that I really don't like. I think it looks much nicer if it sort of tapers in to the rest of the rope. So what we're going to do is continue weaving and stagger where the ends come out, and it's going to end up with a much more sleek look. Choose the strand that is in the same direction as the whole of the ice splice. That strand we're going to leave alone. We're going to turn to the next one, and we're going to weave this one time. So we're going to jump over the strand immediately below and under the next. Now we have 2 strands coming out on the same side parallel to each other. We move to the 3rd strand. This one we're now going to weave twice. So we jump over a strand and under the next. Do the same thing again. Now, if we've done all this correctly, we should have our 3 strands coming all out more or less parallel to each other on the same side of the splice. You can see this gives the splice sort of a nice taper into the rope. At this point, you just kind of make sure that everything feels nice and tight, and we are ready to cut off the excess and melt the ends. You can use scissors to do this, but when cutting rope, the kind of sawing motion of the scissors will really sort of tear apart the fibers, and it will make this fuzz out and be kind of a mess. A better method for cutting is to use a knife or a chisel. Lay the rope that you want to cut on a block of wood, and we're going to cut these ends off maybe like a couple millimeters from the rope. Just give a little bit of rope there that you'll have enough to melt. And with a knife or a chisel, set it over the rope and whack it with a mallet. You have a nice clean cut on the rope, and that's going to melt really nicely. So we're going to repeat that with the other 2 strands. And now we're ready to melt this. I like to have my knife or some other piece of metal on hand ready, because once these get melted, we're going to press them against that metal surface so that when these melt, they melt into a nice smooth shape instead of kind of sort of bulbous balls of plastic. Once they seem pretty melty, then quickly roll it against your knife or whatever surface. And you see that what we wind up with is just nice smooth ends that are locked in place, and we have an ice splice. So there you have it. This rope is now ready to go on a drum. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the comments below. Like anything else, the more often you do this, the more you practice, the easier and faster it gets. That said, if you're apprehensive about the process or just don't want to do it yourself, we do sell rope on our website. It comes in a 50-foot length with the ice splice already in place and ready to go. 50 feet is enough for all the way up to most, say, 28-inch bass drums, possibly even larger, depending on the depth of the drum. If you needed a custom length, of course, you could just reach out to us and we'll do whatever you want. Anyway, we'll put a link to the website in the description below. As always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.